Hello world of YouTube and welcome to another episode of Redacted, the show where I take a look at records that have a solid foundation but a spotty execution. And today we're going to be doing our first viewer request one, and one that I would say was a challenge but for a different reason than any other ones that I've had so far. And it's mostly because I publicly have been pretty outspoken about my feelings about these records. And you know, these two records themselves, I would argue, are a lower point in the band in question's career, and definitely were a shift in sound that I don't think people were really wanting from them, but they might have owned nonetheless. I'm talking, of course, about the mid-90s twosome by famous metal band Metallica, that is Load and Reload. We're going to mash them together, and I'm going to call it Loaded. Loaded seems like the most obvious name to give it, but it's just kind of what came to me as like the best name for it. Now, of course, if you've seen my Metallica discography review or you saw one of my recent Q&As, I don't like this. I don't like Load. And to be honest, I'm not partial to Reload all that much either. I think it's a decent step above Load and Saint Anger, but Load is certainly my least favorite Metallica project. And it's mostly because I feel like they stripped back a lot of what made the Black Album really good, and a lot of the experiments didn't come together all that well to me. But when it came to pulling them together, I didn't want to just have a lot of Reload and not much of Load. I wanted equal representation of both. And so I figured I would take it upon myself, I would challenge myself to sit down and actually go over the strengths of Load. So I'm going to be talking a lot about positive things of songs on Load, and that's not something you're going to see from me very often. I took it upon myself to try and have an equal balance. I believe there's still probably a little more Reload than Load, but before I get into the specific songs, my big focus and pull away from Load was to focus on the songs where the writing is truly the strength. My biggest issue with Load especially is that when it decided to pick up the pace, the songwriting fell in response to that. So while there isn't much energy across these two records, because I think Reload has a similar issue, I wanted to focus more on James's songwriting and put the songs on this twosome that I think had the best songwriting in general out of the two projects. And I got it down to 11 songs, and these are those songs. Now, given I didn't have much energy across this track listing as far as a lot of speed, I had to keep Fuel. And plus, Fuel, I think, is the closest Metallica's really written or come to writing a meme song, and I feel like to not include that would just discredit a lot of people's love of Reload. And plus, Fuel is a fun enough song. It's fine. I like the song. I think it's got a nice chorus. I like the drums in it. From there, I really kind of keep the pace normal, because while, again, I don't have much energy, it creeps up a little bit near the end. A lot of this run is going to focus on the boldness and new direction that Metallica was taking. That's why the House that Jack Built is next. A really strong written song that I think aims for the nosebleeds in the way that Load was trying to. And as you'll notice, I kind of flip-flop Load and Reload. I tried different track listings where that didn't happen, but this is the one where I feel like felt the most balanced while still kind of following the Metallica formula, as it were. Because after House That Jack Built, a kind of song that kind of has a nice mid-tempo but grows in intensity, I went to Devil's Dance, which is just a nice, sleek, kind of sinister-sounding song. You know, instead of doubling down on heaviness, because that didn't really happen on these records unless songwriting was a sacrifice, I'm more focused on the sinister edge that was coded in Load and Reload. And so Devil's Dance, I just kind of wanted to introduce that early on as an idea, and I think Devil's Dance is one of the better instances of it anyway. But then, of course, in a Metallica album, the fourth song is usually a ballad, and so Mama Said, probably the best ballad on both records, even though I had a lot of things that I had issues with of it in my discography review. From a songwriting perspective, it honestly really is a well-written song. You know, and I like the writing on it, and I think that as I've gotten older, I've grown to appreciate that song a little bit more. But of course, had to do that. Had to put the ballad into the fourth track. It's the Metallica album, and then right after that, just some singles. Some hit the singles hard. Because Memory Remains, a song that was humongous. It was a song from Reload that I honestly really, really loved, and I still really enjoyed. I think it's a nice stomper. It's a nice way to pick up the intensity without maybe increasing the speed after a come down, like Mama said. And then we're just going to keep that burning with Until It Sleeps, another really strong, catchy song that Metallica wrote that introduces a little bit more of a different kind of experimentation. Before going into something tried and true, the Unforgiven II, while I took out some of the other plagiaristic moments that were on load, I kept the Unforgiven 2 because I feel like I had to. It would have been a little paradoxical because the Unforgiven 3 exists. So I kept the Unforgiven 2, even though it is the one point across both albums where they get the most derivative and plagiaristic because it's a sequel song. But I didn't keep King Nothing because of that reason. Like, I wanted to pull away some of the plagiaristic tendencies that coded load. And then after that, another big single, Hero of the Day. I kept, given I got rid of King Nothing, I wanted to still keep a lot of the singles because, surprisingly enough, people do really like Load and Reload a lot more than I do. And so I wanted to keep a lot of the songs that hook people in and keep them steady. I wanted to just have a nice run of them before I got to the more ambitious stuff. I also needed to have some blues-centric stuff, and while I had Mama Said and The House That Jack Built, and later on in the track listing there's a Low Man's Lyric, I also wanted to keep something else that was blues-centric, and Hero of the Day has that kind of grungy alternative riff that solidified Load as a more alternative-centric piece, and this furthers that in this kind of combo record. Because the last three songs on the record are where I kind of get back into some of the deeper cuts from those records that I think are well written and kind of pick up the energy a little bit. You know, Where the Wild Things Are is another one of those sinister cuts. It kind of has a nice sinister guitar lead. It also has, in its own way, a similar sound lyrically and the nuance seen on an album like Injustice for All, but it's in a different prism, if that makes any sense. And then Thorn Within is, I don't want to say it's a faster song, but again, it picks up the intensity a little bit, kind of akin to The Memory Remains, but from a song from Load. And then I close it with Low Man's Lyric, because it's the longest song I kept, and I think the writing on Low Man's Lyric is really, really good, and I think it's another big song that's going to close the record out. It has the pacing of a classic Metallica song with the ideas of a modern Metallica song. Or of a 90s Metallica song, and that's why I kept it, and I made it the closer, because it's this big final statement to close. And that's the track listing. That's why I chose what I chose. Again, I wanted to focus on the singles, because that was a big thing with this record, and while I omitted some, I kept a lot of what sold the record, along with a lot of the songs that I think are better written from Load and Reload. You'll notice I omitted stuff like Ain't My Bitch and 2x4, and Fixer, just because they're songs that don't really do anything for me, and while some of that may have sacrificed a lot of the intensity, I wanted to keep the emotional potency from Load and Reload, because I think that's those records' stronger suits. You know, I think that some of the bluesier leaning stuff is still there, that was prevalent on Load and Reload. It's just in a lesser degree, because I got rid of some of the derivative stuff, some of the faster paced stuff with the bluesier rock writing, and yeah. I'm still personally not into Load and Reload all that much. I think this is better than the combination of both those records back to back, but maybe this is more for an experiment. Those who like Load and Reload, what do you think of this track listing? Let me know. This is the first time I've done a Redacted on two records from a band that I really, really used to love. I still really enjoy, but I had such passionate opinions on in a negative sense. You know, I trimmed Scorpion. I didn't really like that record, but I even bumped it up to just kind of a standard Drake record. This is the first time I tackled two records that I'd thought about doing, but I held off on initially because, again, I'm not all that into them. But let me know. Thank you again to Jonathan Lustig for this suggestion a couple months back on my Weezer video. Hopefully, I did it justice for you, man. And that's going to wrap it. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking and commenting if you have already. If you haven't, be sure to like. And if you like the music, gaming, and general nerdy content that I bring, be sure to subscribe. I also want to give a special thanks to my patrons. If you would like to join their ranks, my Patreon is linked in the description. And I thank them wholeheartedly for helping financially support this channel. I'm going to get out of here. You guys have good days, lives, situations. I've been Rack, and I'll see you another day.